Hey everyone, it's Andy and Jenna here from A Couple Travelers coming to you from Sandals Grenada, where we just recently finished up our land and sea tour around the island of Grenada, and we're here to summarize our experience.
We did the tour through Island Routes, which is Sandals' official partner for excursions, and it was called Grenada by Land and Sea Tour, and it was $350 per person. So for our group of 6, totaled $2,100.
Not cheap.
Not cheap. So we're gonna take you through the tour. We filmed a lot, and we're gonna tell you about our experience and whether or not you should check this out. So on the Island Routes website, when we booked, we were told this tour is a 270-minute tour, and it started at 9:30 a.m. We were picked up at the resort in a shuttle of some sort, and we had about a 25-30 minute drive,
If that, yeah.
to the marina, which was a beautiful marina
In St. George, the capital.
in St. George. So we get off the shuttle, we meet our tour guide for the first half, for the sea part of the excursion, and then we made our way over to the boat, met the rest of the team, and sailed off on the first part of the tour.
Was a pretty intimate tour too, so there was only 2 other couples in addition to our party of 6, so 10
10
people.
total.
And then there was a captain, and then our guide, and then another crewmate on the boat itself. So pretty small group to start the tour off with.
We kicked it off with some rum punch cocktails.
Yep.
And they did say you can have one cocktail before snorkeling, and then after snorkeling, all you care to enjoy, basically. So they first took us through to see St. George, and they pointed out a lot of landmarks and their schools and their hospitals and like their version of like the Statue of Liberty, like a statue that's there.
Yeah.
And we learned a lot about the island. And then they took us over to what was my favorite part of the day, which was the underwater sculpture garden.
World famous.
World famous. I've had my eye on it for a while. It's something I wanted to do, to either snorkel or scuba dive there. So that was the next thing that we did, and that was my favorite part by far.
The boat made its way over there probably for a good 30 minutes or so, as Jenna said. Our guide, Rock, did an amazing job pointing out some of the different sites, and then we set up anchor right outside the sculpture garden. Everybody got into their snorkel gear and jumped off the boat, and Rock guided us through the garden.
And he was very good at telling us, because it's not all in one spot. It was like
Yeah.
we swam to one thing, he told us what was down there and what to look for, and then we'd go to the next thing, and sometimes he'd go up and bring up a sea urchin, but he was really good at pointing things out to us, and he even took, he volunteered if anybody wanted him to take their camera and go get photos or go get videos. He was more than happy to do that. He got some great shots. I was so excited about that.
Yeah.
He was wonderful, really engaging, and we were out there snorkeling for quite a while.
Yeah, I think it was about 45 minutes.
Yeah, so it was nice, and you didn't have to wear a life vest, but
Yeah.
everybody got a noodle.
Yep.
Which I thought the noodle, every other time we've snorkeled, we've had life vests, and I thought the noodle was awesome because I felt like I was able to actually get more horizontal in like a comfortable position, because like the life vest always like kind of kept your head
Right.
up, but I put like the noodle under my hip, and like I felt like I was like really able to swim fast.
Yeah.
But they provide the masks, the the snorkel,
Yeah.
the fins, and the noodle for that. So, and they always made sure, is everyone good at this spot before we swim on to the next one? And there was like probably like 5 or 6 different like spots that we swam to.
So after snorkeling, we got back onto the boat. They offered us more drinks. They offered us some snacks, and then brought us over back into St. George, actually next to the cruise ship terminal. We were right next to a big cruise ship, and in order to get back to shore, you had to get into a dinghy from the larger boat into the dinghy to get back to shore.
Yeah, it was kind of fun.
Yeah, it was cool.
It was like a 90-second dinghy ride. It wasn't like you were like on it forever, but
Yeah.
it was just like funny cramming 6, like like my dad stole my brother's.
8 full-grown adults actually in this small dinghy to bring us back to shore.
Yes, and then the interesting part was that we learned the first part, the sea part, was handled by a different company than the land part. So when they brought us by the dinghy to the terminal, we then got into a Jeep to do the land portion with a completely different company.
Yeah.
So like we tipped our first excursion guides, and then we were meeting our second excursion guide basically. So the 10 original guests from the first part of the tour were there for the second part of the tour, and we got on a Jeep equivalent.
Open air Jeep.
Open
yeah.
air, and we sit down and then we take off and we're going. And I kind of remember thinking to myself, like, why are there like these bars on the Jeep? And then like a minute into the ride, the guy's like, all right, everybody stand up. And that was awesome.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah, and he was asking us, like, you can't do this in the States, can you? And we're like, nope. Nope.
And he was like, anyone want it? Like, we can stop for beers, whatever you want. As long, like, you can't drink and drive, but you're not driving.
Right. So, and he was super engaging, like, very, very knowledgeable about the island, and very passionate about Grenada as well. So, like, a really kind of quintessential tour guide.
Yeah.
I think in that regard. Our first stop
which was like probably like 45 minutes
Yeah.
about into it. Like I remember, I think I was only, after the 10 of us stood up for a while, but then slowly people sat. And then like 3 of us, I was one of the ones who remained standing until we got to the waterfall. And by the time we got there, from like holding onto the things, I was like, oh, I'm going to feel that tomorrow.
Yeah. So that was our first stop, was a waterfall, the Concord waterfall. And we got out of the Jeep. They have a couple local vendors set up there.
My first question was, okay, so how long do we have at the waterfall? And was told 10 to 20 minutes. I was a little bummed about that, but then, so like, because it was so short, nobody else wanted to get in, but I was like, I don't care, I'm going in.
Yeah, so it's a freshwater waterfall, right?
Yes, and it was freezing, but fun.
Yeah.
It was super deep because then people were volunteering to jump off.
Yeah,
you
there
know,
were
for a
locals
tip.
there who, it's more or less their livelihood. So they were offering to jump off the top for tips, which we, were glad to do that. And then they had some other vendors there, selling bananas and other things.
Lots of spices, of course, since this is the spice.
Yeah, yes, Island of Spice or Spice Isle, or whatever the official tagline of Grenada is. So from there we got back in the Jeep and made our way up to the Diamond Chocolate Factory, which was another pretty decent trek through some villages on the west coast of Grenada up to the north end of the island where the chocolate factory is. And we got out there, were able to go inside and sample and buy some of the chocolate, and had some lunch too.
And it was there was a sign there saying it's a National Geographic Top 10 chocolate factories, which I thought was fun.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it smelled really good.
It smelled like
really
a chocolate
good.
factory.
Yes.
Yeah. So earlier in the tour, the captain of the boat actually called in our order for the lunch.
Yeah, they asked if we wanted chicken or fish.
Yeah.
for
So
lunch.
it was that with some like rice and like another grain and like some collard greens, and
Which, when we were handed it, I think frankly we were a little like surprised because like first of all they had said like restaurants. We're like, oh, we're stopping
right.
at a restaurant, and then we were handed that like given no knives, no napkins,
Yeah.
like no water, just like juice and this. So we were like a little taken back by it, but it was surprisingly tasty food actually.
yeah.
And we ate that at the chocolate factory on like picnic tables, and then right after we had lunch, which actually at that time it was about 2:00, which having eaten breakfast so early, like people were starving.
Yeah.
Like when we showed up to the chocolate factory, people were like, when are we eating lunch? Like we're like when
Right. So to work backwards in the day a little bit, like our excursion left the resort at 9:30, so we had breakfast around 8:30. So this was a good, 6 hours without any real substantial food. When you're holding onto the Jeep and you're snorkeling, so your body's already exerted a lot of energy, and so you need to replenish that. So this is really the point in the tour where things started to get a little weird, and we were like, something is just off here. So I forget if it was before or after we took a tour of the chocolate factory.
Which was right after lunch.
Right.
They were like, okay, now it's time for the chocolate factory. And we're like, aren't we supposed to be back at the resort in like a half hour? Like we were getting confused, but the guy's like, it's 5 minutes. 5-minute tour. So we went and we did the tour, which was very nice, but everybody on the tour was kind of grumpy. Not even just our group, the other people too.
Yeah.
Things were just starting to fall apart at that point.
And I felt bad because we had this great guide at the chocolate factory who was engaging and knowledgeable and very friendly, but nobody was really into it at that point.
Yeah.
So after the tour, we get back into the Jeep and we're like, when do we think we'll be back? He's like, oh yeah, we have a 2-hour drive back to the resort. And so this is where it's okay, hold up. We thought, as Jenna said in the start of the tour, this was a 270-minute experience, which is 4.5 hours. Now, net, this is going to be a 7.5-hour experience.
And at that point, people were like, we've already been in this Jeep for so long on bumpy, crazy turns, stop and go. People were already getting nauseous and sick.
Yeah.
So it was to mentally knowing that you then had to do 2 hours of it to get back. And we were already we should be back at the resort now, and now you're telling me we have 2 hours to get back. At first we thought it was a joke.
Well, and the kicker for us specifically was that we had booked a family group photo session for 5 o'clock. So working back from the estimated 6 hours that we were told originally, which that doesn't even map to the 270 minutes on the website.
No.
That was going to get us back at 3:30 with an hour and a half to freshen up before photos. So we were fine with that. So we didn't get back until a little after 5, and so we had to come and reschedule our photos, which we had yesterday. It all worked out. But really the main issue here is that Island Routes just failed to communicate the accurate tour information.
And it wasn't even the accuracy of the time, which yes is a problem. People need to know how long they're gone for, but it also was not communicating the extremity of the Jeep tour.
Yeah.
And for the price point of $350 is usually indicative of a much more luxurious experience, and we weren't offered water once on a 7.5-hour tour. Not once.
Well, they had water in the boat.
In the boat, yes, I'm sorry. In the Jeep part. So from noon to when we got back at the resort, we were never offered water.
We've done excursions with Island Routes before, some land and sea tours similar to this, and didn't really think twice about it being vastly different from those experiences, with the main factor being that the other land and sea tours have been on a catamaran, mostly for the sea portion, with probably 30 to 40 other people, and this was a much more intimate experience on a speedboat. And again,
which that part,
that was fine.
Loved it.
Yeah.
It felt very exclusive to be just 10 guests on this very nice
Right.
boat. And then it really was the second half of it, which is a completely different company. Even these companies are not Island Routes.
Right.
Island Routes basically charters these.
They
tour
subcontract these
exactly,
companies. Yeah. So our experience is in no way a reflection on the subcontractors. This is an Island Routes organizational mess up that caused all of this frustration.
Right. And we were very surprised because we've been on so many. We've never
Right.
left feeling like we didn't get our money's worth. We've never left without being like, wow, this was the highlight of the trip. So we were just and usually that's with paying $100, $125 a person
Yeah.
for a similar length tour versus paying $350 and being, on the way home, we didn't even mention 20 minutes into the 2-hour drive, I was gonna just super nauseous, but thankfully they stopped and they let me sit in the front with the driver, who once I was facing forward, I was better. And I had a lovely chat with the driver, and he was laughing at me because the roads are crazy and like up and down, and so like, you know, you coming this close to other cars, and I'd go like,
Yeah.
and he would like laugh because he's like, he's got it. He's done this so many times. He knows like what's close and what's not.
Professional,
Yes.
and because the drive back, so we went up the west side of the island. The route back was through the rainforest on the east side of the island.
Which was awesome.
So that being said, knowing that we didn't really get an accurate description of what this tour is going into it, if you were looking for a full experience to see most of Grenada in all of its beauty, this is good, as long as you could put up with like the again what, to Jenna's point, like the extremity of the tour.
Because I think the other couple on it loved it.
Right.
They were standing the whole time. It just, if we knew that this is what that was, we just wouldn't have booked this one. But the other couple we talked with, we even chatted with them yesterday, they said like that was not worth $350, and they were so mad at how long we were on the Jeep and how extreme it was.
So that was my main disappointment, is that since the island is so beautiful and we got to see a lot of these incredible views, both on the early part and the later part of the land excursion, it was just tainted by the fact that we were like tired and frustrated. So we fully didn't get to really appreciate like the sightseeing aspect of this. So when we got back, the next day, we did go to Island Routes and told them, you know, exactly what our experience was, and that there was some miscommunication here between the information that's on your website and what we were told and what we experienced. So they kind of acknowledged that they had messed up, that it is in fact supposed to be a 7.5 hour excursion. So we will look to make sure they update that accordingly on the website. And just in the interest of full transparency, since we did, say, we were not satisfied with this experience, they refunded 10% of the total cost of the excursion. So about $200, which we appreciated as a make good. But, on top of that, for what you were paying for a Sandals Vacation and for an Island Routes excursion, they just need to be better.
Yeah. And another thing I took issue with was, so like we had went and talked with them, and they were like, okay, let us talk to our supervisors, come back tomorrow. We come back tomorrow. It like hadn't been communicated because the guy Andy had talked to wasn't there and he didn't communicate it. So then they had said like come back, and then somebody had called our like, there was just a lot of like, you keep coming back, like us having to leave the pool, do things to go check in on something, as opposed to we will call your room and leave a voicemail, or we will do this, or give me your phone number, I'll text you and we can coordinate a time. It was just like we kept having to interrupt our day to go, and that was like another just little thing that I found issue with.
So that kind of sums up our experience on the Grenada Land and Sea Tour. This is not us saying don't do this tour. This is not us saying don't do any Island Routes tours.
Definitely not the case.
Yeah.
Everything else we've done has been wonderful, and I think if you know what you're getting yourself into with this tour, and this is your thing, then you're gonna love it.
Yes.
We loved the sea part. Loved.
Yep.
And if we had known what we were getting ourselves into, I just don't think it was the right fit for our group of 6.
Correct. So, like Jenna said, we have had great experiences across all of our other Sandals vacations with Island Routes. We will link some of those videos about those excursions in the description here. But yeah, that's just kind of our thoughts in general.
Yeah, just hoping that this is helpful. When we were researching this tour, we couldn't find anything, so we thought a video would be helpful for other people who are considering it.
That's all we have for you today. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on social media at A Couple Travelers.
And until next time, keep traveling.